Oh, I hit the wrong button. I would have been right on time. How's it going, everybody? Happy Sunday. Happy Sunday. How's everybody doing? Having a good day? Good weekend? Oh, man. Happy to be here. Justin Z's first. Good job. C# Worm. How's it going, buddy? Quindor's here. Ricardo, Nick. All right. GN, Mr. Fixers, Padre, Father Time. How's it going? You'll be so happy to hear about the bug. Although I'm probably not going to be able to do much to it for the next few months, but I made some progress recently and I'm very excited about it. Awesome. 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 People show. Yes, Nicholas. Thank you. Whew. Jed, Mike, Eric, Victor, Dave, Ingmar, Stove Doctor. So glad to see you guys. How's everybody doing? Oh, man. Do tell, do tell. Well, what I will tell you about the bug real quick is just that I figured out the BMS so I can get a good battery finally running without it turning into a bomb, hopefully. All right, Songor, how's it going? Switchplate, yeah. How you been? Still cranking out videos. There's Luma. There's Luma. Always jealous of that car he's got in his garage. Oh man, how's it going? So yeah, HA Switchplate, we can jump right into it. Let's start talking about what it is. And we've already got Luma here, and him and I tested the audio stuff yesterday, so hopefully it'll still be okay today. You never know. You never really know. I don't know what happened to my microphone. It just stopped working. And for the first time ever, I actually did the Windows troubleshooting thing, and it says, hey, this isn't working. You want to troubleshoot it? And I said, sure. And it actually did. And it said, oh, your microphone driver has an issue. So do you want us to fix it? And I said, yes. And it said, okay, restart your computer. And I did. And it fixed. Is that crazy or what? Hey, Cy, Keaton. All right. Thanasis. Sweetie. Phil and Paul. Good morning, everybody. So let's talk about the HA Switchplate now. I'll give a little introduction and then we'll bring Luma on and we will get right to business. What mic do I use? This is a Blue Yeti. It's a Blue Yeti microphone, but I processed the sound through Reaper. Reaper is this. And it's like you have to have you set up a virtual audio cable and anyways, whatever. It's processed so it cuts out the other sound in the room, like the ceiling fan and stuff like that. So wait, Windows Troubleshooter worked? I know, I was pretty shocked too. Buy a lottery ticket, right? Thomas is here. How's it going, man? Boy, we got all the good homies. Oh, I'm so happy today. So happy. Let's see if HASP brings up HA Switchplate. No. Well, it was worth a try. What was that? What was mine? All right. So you can go to haswitchplate.com, and haswitchplate.com gives you some instructions and some background of what it is. But basically, it's a small touchscreen, which I have handy here. It's a small touchscreen. This is a Nextion 2.4, I think is the size. Yeah, 2.4 inch touch display. I don't remember what these cost. Luma could probably tell us, but I want to say they were maybe $15 somewhere in there. Might be 20, but they're it's a small little display. It's got an SD card slot on the back and some microprocessor stuff. And you take that and you pair it with a D1 Mini. He doesn't have a picture of it here, but basically ends up looking like this. So you get a little power supply and a D1 Mini here, and then some terminals here that connect to the wire connection on that switch plate there. And you end up with, something that can go on your wall if you want, like this. Okay. Or I don't want to unplug it but you can't see it. Or you can also have, I know Luma's got a little thing where it sits on your desk. It's a real nice little stand where it sits on your desk, and it's like just a little touch plate. So you've seen some of these things, right? You've probably seen these brilliant switches. Brilliant light switches, right? These guys. Ooh. So I don't remember what these cost, but they're like $100. And I'm sure they've got some customizability, but not a ton. I don't think that we can do this just yet. Anyways, it's this for the DIY guy. Oh, $80, whatever. But it's the HA Switchplate is something like this for the DIY guy, especially for the home assistant guys, because this does say HA Switchplate, right? That's for home assistant. So in the past, and Luma can tell us some more about this too, but in the past, when you built one of these, and I've had several of them around the house, doing all of the YAML, like I don't even know, Luma can tell us. We'll get him on here. Let's just do that. But anyways, it was super complicated, and now it's gotten a lot better. So I got to put this on so I can hear him, and he can hear me. And then let's do it. It's time to fire up the call. Join the call. Oh, and we're back to the VR headset. There he is. There he is. All right, let's see if I can pop this out. Can you hear me? Probably not. Doesn't look like you can. There he is. Man of the hour. Let's see. Hello.
All right.
All right. Now let's see. Can you guys hear him?
Are you getting audio?
It looks to me like they're getting audio. I think so. All right. Shem says, "Is there?" Yes, Shem. In Discord, we'll answer at the end too.
Okay.
Yes, we can hear you. Okay, they can hear you.
The challenge I'm going to have is the stream audio coming out of my mouth is delayed by about, I don't know, 30 seconds. And I'm not getting audio from you in the other chat.
You're not
Is there any way you can get your microphone to talk in there? Otherwise, maybe we could just do this in text.
Well, so you can't hear me in Discord? Okay. So let's see. Try in your. You should. I can see my mic's working in Discord. So try your.
Correct.
Try your Discord audio settings and see if maybe it's going to some other speakers instead of your headset from Discord.
Okay.
I'll have a drink in the meantime.
Okay, gotcha. I'm good.
Sweet. All right. Well, welcome,
All
man.
right. Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. This is awesome. So we talked about this a lot yesterday, but I'll tell the guys I've had a lot of these, and I haven't changed anything on them in well over a year. But I was even thinking about it. I'm thinking, gosh, those are really great, and I would like to make some changes and update and stuff, but oh, what a pain! And so I was just kind of letting them sit.
Pain.
Right? Major.
Yeah. And what I told you yesterday is me too, right? Like I have more of these around my house, and like a bunch of them just aren't. I have like one page configured, right? Like it'll show I needed a clock or something somewhere, and so there's anybody that's worked with this, and probably no one more so than me, I tell you that setting it up is reasonably straightforward, and out of the box, it does the things that I made it do. Getting it to do the things you want it to do, it's a chore. And, if you have one of them and you want to set up 3 pages, then maybe you might spend a few hours doing that. But if you want them around your house, and now, those 3 hours becomes 15 or 20 hours, and there's a line somewhere where things stop being fun. Start being a lot of work, right? And I feel like I crossed that line a long time ago. So yeah. And so what I'm hoping is due to some really great technology coming out of the Home Assistant project itself, has enabled a new way for someone who is building things that work with Home Assistant to surface those capabilities into Home Assistant in a way that's a lot more flexible and easier for the user to use. And the key bit is, as a user, don't have to touch any YAML if you don't want, right? Like that's right there alone. It's just a good reason to start looking at that option. And so I think with that introduction of blueprints back in, I think, December it was of this last year. And I know you've talked about it on the stream a few times, kind of looking at those But that really has been an enabling technology to kind of change the way that the HASP project works. We've got a lot of folks that are dipping their toes in the water yet, and we'll kind of maybe take some time here today and kind of walk through what that looks like, what's going to happen in the future, why I haven't released it yet. It is coming soon, but there's a good reason to not release it quite yet. But let's if you're ready for it, maybe we could start with the upgrade process. Take one of your devices right now, and the reason I say that, there's going to be
Okay. Okay. Let me make one change in my audio because they're reporting an echo. So we're gonna switch this to just headset. And I've got my device ready for upgrade.
sweet.
Okay. Now, give us let's see. One more. All right. Give us a la 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 so we can.
Check 1 2.
Okay. That should be good. I think you guys got him, and he should not be an echo, right? I think we're golden. Just had to switch. A little bit of audio technical difficulties today. Okay. So what I've got here, I just pulled this up just as an example real quick, just to show everybody who hasn't played with these before what some of this YAML used to look like. I mean, so here is basically what I was using for one of these switch plates. And each one of these is like for a page and some different things on each page of the screen, right? And then inside of here, you had tons of YAML. I mean, look at this. This is one of these pages, right? And it's setting up entities and automations and templates, and it's just. And then if you wanted to change that, it's like, oh, okay, it's awful. So I want to change this so that it's it's connecting to a different light or something. I got to go through there and find where all that is and change all that. So that was part of the hindrance. So let's get to the fixing. What do I got to do, man? Teach me, oh wise one.
Yeah. So the first thing we're going to want to do is set all that on fire. Just get rid of absolutely every piece of that, right?
Okay.
And so, what I'll suggest, is if you have an existing device, probably the easiest way to do what we're going to do today for the moment would be just to rename it and leave all the stuff that you have there just there.
Okay.
And so you'll see in those packages folders, you have one called bench, there's one called integrations, and one called tower. And usually that means you deployed 3 HASPs. One of them has got the name bench, one's the name tower, right? So if you want to take one of your HASPs down to just one that's convenient for you sitting next to you, and let's bring up the web interface on that guy.
Okay.
And we'll just rename it.
Okay, great. So we can go here. So I'm going to block out your face for a minute.
Yeah.
Why?
I'm not that pretty, so I think that'll be okay. Your viewers won't be any worse for the wear.
You got a lot of hair though. You got a lot of hair, so maybe.
Catching up to you, buddy.
See.
Rogaine works. Let me just say that. Joys of being old.
All right, let's see here. 1 second. Because of course even though you tell the Dream Machine to save the credentials, it does not always save the credentials. I don't remember what the IP address is, and I'm still not completely having great success with MDNS stuff. So,
do you have it nearby?
It's sitting right here.
Is it something that you can pull power on? Is it mounted inside your wall?
Oh yeah.
If you power cycle it, it will show you the IP when it boots up.
Oh, okay. Well, that's cool. fact, that will be helpful because then I can put it, I can power it up differently, and I can make it so we can see it on the camera here. Give it a little bit more of a little bit longer.
Got one
cord.
of my little desktop mounts that I've published a new model, so it's a little smaller than yours.
Yeah.
So you'll see that in a bit. That's been great, just as like a little button box. Those have become, popular for streaming purposes these days, right?
Boy, they have.
So, yeah, the HASP has this other thing that it can do. It could be a cool button box as well.
Oh, it jumped right into the menus. It skipped right past the. That's okay. I'll find it up here. All right, it is 118. Okay, there it is. Oops, you can't see it. There it is. All right. I think this is the one.
All right, so
let me see. Let me reboot it. Yep, that's it. Okay, great. That was a test.
All right. And so we're going to take that name tower and just change it to something else.
Okay. We're going to call it desk. Okay. And MQTT brokers in there. Okay. Is that it? Just save the settings?
Yep. We'll just save. It's going to reboot itself. It'll have the new name. And with the new name, it's going to stop talking to your home automation or home assistant automations because those are all tied to that name tower.
Gotcha.
And so then as we bring this thing back online, it should not flip to any pages or do anything too smart because we've just stopped telling it to do anything.
Looks like it's just blank right now.
That's a little surprising, but we're okay with that. It's not going to be. Does the web page work?
Let's see. Yeah, it looks like it. This looks like it's
okay. That's all we need. All right. In Discord, I sent you a link, and it's just to a post I made on the Home Assistant forums, right? That has kind of a quick update guide on how to get the dev version installed. That's not, I'll say, official documentation yet. And the rationale behind that is that the 1.0 release, which we're building up to here, will be its own implementation. It's going to work just a little bit differently than this. And we'll explain a little bit about why that is here when we got when we get the LCDs going. So Step 0, are you running the newest version of Home Assistant?
Let's double check.
At least a February release. And if you aren't, you really need to upgrade because there are some big security problems that came up. I think you recall about a month ago.
Yep. I think it looks like I'm at I need to update the operating system to 5.12, but I should be on the latest Home Assistant.
Yeah, perfect. All right, very good. And the reason that that's important is because, like I said, the Home Assistant team has just been cranking on features for templates and blueprints. It's really been awesome. And we're making use of every single piece of it, right? Like I'm watching PRs every day looking for new stuff that we could tie into this project, and they keep coming, right? So the dev version absolutely requires the February release. The reason we're waiting until March is for the March release. That's got some more new features that are going to really help us out. So we're good on Step 0. If you want to go back to that forum post there, we can just walk through these steps one by one.
Okay, here we are. How to test.
And then Step 1 you just did, which was just to rename your device, which is an easy way, like I said, to disable the old automations. If at some point, hey, you're ready to get rid of it, you could just nuke that folder under packages. So you have that folder called Tower. If you delete that folder or move it somewhere not under packages, it'll stop being loaded. And so then Home Assistant won't know about it anymore. And then, at some point we can kiss all of that stuff goodbye. Because we're not using packages at all anymore. They served us well. They did a great job, but we've got some new hotness here. So the very first thing we're going to do is get ourselves up to the newest firmware. So if you copy that URL you see right there.
Okay.
And then we're going to bring that over into the web page.
I lost it. Okay.
So on the web admin page,
Update firmware. Okay.
and on the very top line there is the update ESP from URL. There we go.
Okay.
Paste that URL in. That looks good.
Okay.
Just hit update, and it should start
Let it go.
cranking.
Okay.
Now this process runs pretty fast.
Okay.
I'll note that you're pulling that update from haswitchplate.com. That's obviously a domain I run because it's HTTP. There's no HTTPS, right? So the current version of the HA Switchplate has no SSL support. SSL support takes a lot of RAM, and we just didn't have enough, right? And so it's pulling the files from GitHub, but Git run without SSL. And so what I've got is this awful proxy host that's running at hpswitchplate.com. And when you come in and ask for a firmware, it goes to GitHub, hits it securely, takes all the security off, and sends it back to you. And because that's the only way we could make that happen, right? What we'll see when this thing comes back up, one of the new features is that we've cleaned up the memory substantially, and there's been some big performance gains that come with it. But there's also a new TLS engine available with ESP, and so now we have some new features right away. You'll see MQTT TLS enabled, so we can connect if you have TLS enabled on your broker. If you want to further, we don't have full certificate checking. I could go on for a while about why that's really not a thing that's ever going to happen on ESP8266, but let's just take it as a given. That's a thing that is never going to happen on ESP8266. But what we can do is just check and make sure that the fingerprint is good. So if you want it to be actually secure, we can still do that. The problem there, if you're running Let's Encrypt, is that's going to cycle every 3 months. So every 3 months, your switch plate's going to break because it won't be able to talk to the broker because its certificate has changed. Thus, its fingerprint has changed, and thus it won't pass this test anymore, right? So I will say that's there because some people had asked for it. I think it's a cool feature to have the TLS enabled, but probably you aren't going to do the fingerprint unless you're running your own CA and your own certificates, and you can set a 10-year expiration, in which case this is awesome. So anyway, that's that.
Since I understood about 10% of what you just said, I'm going to leave that unenabled.
Yeah. You know, it's just IoT devices without SSL. You know, people have got some problem with that. Like that is, you know, caused issues. So we're looking to get rid of some of that. But then there's a new thing that comes. If you go back to that update firmware page.
Okay. Update firmware. Okay. Ooh, look at all this. Oh, now it's GitHub.
It's now GitHub, right? Because we have SSL and we can talk right to GitHub. It's pretty exciting. So the next piece we're going to do is if you go down to the update LCD firmware, you're already on the ESP, and then you're going to want to copy paste the URL you see back in that forum post under step 3.
So now we're step 3, update the LCD firmware. So we're going to copy.
Wait, what? Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, copy that. There you go.
Okay. You're probably seeing the stream on a delay, right? So
I am, yeah, sorry.
No, don't do that. Oh, he didn't do it. Okay.
He didn't do it. All right.
All right. So I copied that in there and then update LCD from URL. Bingo.
Very good. And you should see the LCD start cranking, and it's going to take this process just takes a while, right? It's moving a lot of data over a pretty slow serial link. So one of the other new features, yeah, let's see if we can get it on camera there.
Right. I'm trying to.
This is the built-in firmware feature of Nextion. I'm not sure if you're going to be able to see it. Like it's this really tiny font.
If I really underexpose it, and we really zoom in on it, still can't hardly see it.
Oh, there we go. All right. And you're what, maybe 10% there, something like that, right? Like it's gonna take a minute.
Yeah, it's at 9% and just barely working.
Yeah.
But it's going.
So what's going on there is that it's running at 115,200 bits per second. 115,200. It's a common serial speed, right? and the older versions of the next gen firmware produced by the next gen company were limited to that speed, and that was a pretty typical, top end speed you see for a lot of things. But recent releases on their firmware have opened that up to a little over 900,000, so it's that speed times 8. So one of the things
Wow.
that we'll be able to do is an 8 times increase in performance between the Wemos, that PCB you've got there, and the serial that goes to the display. So the next time you need to update this firmware, it will literally go 8 times faster. And it's a pretty substantial jump. And just in like overall responsiveness and boot time, it's been a great improvement.
I'm going to
Um,
drop some
so,
links for some of these sites in the chat there for people that are asking about like the bill of materials. So when we're talking about the
yeah,
next gen display, here it is. There's
yeah,
PCB you can buy. I've actually got one. This one here, I actually did without the PCB. So you can do that too with just some jumpers and a whole lot of praying that things don't get shorted out in your wall. but the PCB makes it really
yeah,
nice. Makes it really nice. Like that. So has that changed? That's probably not
yeah.
changed at all, has it? The PCB part?
Yeah, so the project there is still exactly the same, right? The whole bill of materials is unchanged. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about that, right? It's like, so this started out as I had some of these next gen displays. I was monkeying with them for another. I was making a digital scale for coffee roasting. Turned out great. And then I'm sitting in bed
Who
and I'm
doesn't?
looking, and
Who doesn't
we have one
DIY
of
their own
those.
coffee
Yeah,
roasting
yeah,
skills?
whatever, right? Yeah, of course. uh, and we have like one of those. I don't know what the previous owners, they'd had something in the wall, but it was just like a blank faceplate, right? And I'm laying in bed and I'm looking at that and like, that's kind of annoying. What can I put in there? And like, I wonder if one of those little touch screens I got for my digital scale project would fit in there. And so I run downstairs and I find like that next gen 2.4 screen leaves about 2 millimeters between the top and bottom screws and a standard North American outlet. Like it is the perfect size. If you were going to go design one, it is as big as you can physically put between those two screws. And that's literally what started this whole thing. Like, oh wow, I've got a display and it fits between screws, so let's go ahead and make something, right? So that's what happened, right? And I think you ran into this project pretty early, so you've seen most of kind of the evolution of it, right? Like it started on one of those proto boards like that you saw kind of hand soldered together. It was a 40 by 60 millimeter, and I was able to fit, a high quality power supply. That's important to me because it's touching the parts of your house that can start fires. And I generally find it to be bad form to kill all of your users and their families while they're sleeping. That's usually bad, and so there won't be anybody left on the stream, and then we'll just be talking to ourselves. So let's not do that. And so it's made by Meanwell, right? It's like a well-known Taiwanese brand, right? And then that. Uh, the Wemos, which is just kind of common, and a couple parts on there, and that all fit on there. However, there are concerns about doing it that way around safety for long term. There's something called voltage creep, and that if you have 120 volts AC, it can over time degrade the fiberglass if it's close to another trace at a different potential. And so it will literally creep across the board to a point where it can then at some point start a fire. It won't
Oh,
happen right away. It might be 5 years down the road, right? So that's bad. I'm going to grab an example here. I don't know if you have one handy. So first of all, there's links to my store. I sell these devices completed and assembled. And if you don't have a 3D printer, and if you don't have, a soldering iron or whatever else, happy to sell you one. But I'd 10 times rather not sell you the completed unit, right? It's so much more fun if you can make this yourself. You have access to a 3D printer. Everything about the design is really, it's through hole. It's made to be assembled easily. Right? It would be easier for me to design it with surface mount. And I think if you're making them, at quantity, if you're comfortable with surface mount, it's a lot of times easier to deal with. But for folks that are new at soldering, I think through hole makes a lot more sense. So there's a complete bill of materials. You can just order the parts yourself, go make it yourself. But the one thing I'd strongly encourage you to do is to either get the PCB manufactured. I have the source files. If you've ever done this, they're called Gerbers. right? So like there's just the standard file format for circuit boards. And so the Gerbers are in the GitHub. You can send them off to your board shop and they'll ship them back to you, whatever else, or buy them from me. I'd be happy to sell you those things. But it's a big safety feature. So I'm going to hold this up, and I know there's some delay, but the slots that are cut into the circuit board between the legs of AC coming in and the rest of the board are a pretty critical safety feature for this to be in your wall for years and years to come, right? So I would strongly encourage you, if you are going to build one of these, grab a PCB. You can buy it from me, or you can get them made yourself. And all the rest of the stuff you can just buy on Amazon, right? And if this seems like a bit much, but you want it, again, I'm selling the completed units, so you can go ahead and buy one for me. But I've got a day job. I'm doing this because it's fun. I think other people like building these things and have found some use for it. So I'm not the guy that's going to tell you that you have to buy stuff from me. Just go get it from Amazon or what have you. Go build it, and then come to the forum or come into Discord and show us pictures of it. Because man, that's why I do this. I love it when people are taking this project and running with it. Man, it's just so cool. So that's where that is, right? So you've got the full bill of materials there. There's some guides on how to get this stuff installed, and then you have all the software, which we're going to dig into a little bit, right? And so, as you noted, there's the software as it exists today is a lot. Like it is just, see, we got a good image there showing what the PCB
There's
looks
the
like.
PCB.
And so you opened one of the examples, right? So that was a screen full of YAML files. They're separated out by page, so hopefully you can find stuff. And in each of those YAML files, some of them are like 700 or 800 lines long, right? It's all pretty dense. When I originally made it, I did intentionally create the pages in order of complexity. And so page one is scenes, because scene control seemed to be the least complicated thing I could think of. You put some text on top of a button that has the name of the scene you're going to trigger. And when someone pushes that button, you catch the button being pressed, like the event that that button was pushed down, and then you trigger a scene. And I think if you wade through this, if you take a look at it, you could probably figure out what's going on. We've got a thing that, when Home Assistant starts or the HASP connects, it sends the fonts to use and the text to show on each of the 4 buttons. And then you have 4 more automations that recognize when one of those buttons has been pressed and then does something in response, right? Okay, great. And so as a new user and someone that, kind of knows their way around Home Assistant, one could open this up and probably figure this out, right? It went downhill pretty quickly from there. So like as you go through the rest of the pages, right, things get more and more complicated. And then as people want features, I am happy to oblige. I think more features is more cool. And so I will, go into it, but then they really started getting complicated. And what I found is that not a lot of folks were really digging into it. Right? Like it was just too much. And so they would modify the things that I did once or twice, but by and large, they just, any change to this, particularly like with some of these dimmers, like there's like 3 or 4 automations for each button and they all interrelate. And if you don't really natively understand how or why that is, and I gotta be honest, if I looked at it, it would take me a few minutes to get that back into my head, right? It's not obvious.
You are actually
Then
even describing my experience. Like that's the same thing
yeah,
that I went through. Like,
yeah,
okay, I can take this. I can move some buttons around and everything, but this is getting really complicated. Like I'm just gonna stop
yeah.
here. Yeah.
And
And
you're a
that's
doctor.
me. And that's
Right?
me.
And
Like I do this.
and you got this
I know how to do this.
yeah. Right. It's still hard. Like it's just too hard. And so I'm looking at this and like, what can I do to make this easier for users? And what I came up with was make it just insanely complicated. So I spent most of December and a good portion of January uh, turning these like 400 line YAMLs into 2,000 line YAMLs, adding a whole bunch of helper objects. So, like page one was still 4 scenes. You couldn't change it to be something that wasn't a scene control, but I had a full Lovelace GUI that had pull down menus for each of the 4 buttons that you could select existing scenes. It could keep track of those, and like the background for that involved just a truckload of automations and helper objects. So we went from like 70 or 80 automations to over 200 in that process, and I wasn't all the way done yet. I think I got up to about page 5, and it was taking a week or two on each one of these YAMLs just to get all this stuff in there, and it really worked out well, and it was solving some real problems that people had. Like, the way that the existing environment works is that it looks at your configuration.yaml. It checks to make sure some things are there, and if they aren't, it will automatically add those. And the problem that we're running into is that the Home Assistant developers don't want people doing that anymore. And so they keep pulling features out of the configuration YAML, so it can't be configured there anymore. Right? And it just becomes a breaking change. If you had HASP installed, you would upgrade Home Assistant, and now you've got a warning because I put MQTT in there, and oh yeah, you're not supposed to put MQTT in there anymore. It's now through the GUI. And moreover, I can't automate the GUI for you, right? Like, I don't have any way to script into that world and start adding these features. So I have all of these requirements that used to be automatic and I could do for you that are no longer being able to be done for you, right? It drove me nuts. Like, I thought that the Home Assistant development team was crazy for doing this, and it was really frustrating. Eventually, I saw the wisdom of what they're getting at, right? But it took me a while to get there. And then you had the setup that was mostly done for you, but in the back end, it was just getting uglier and uglier and uglier, right? Like, these files were like, I couldn't open scene the page 1 and really figure out what it's doing without a few minutes of studying. And boy, what are the chances that just some random user is going to open this up and be able to do something meaningful and have it be theirs, like, control their lights and do the things that they want to do. So that really there was a point where I was just going to give up. I was so frustrated, right? And what happened was, it was one of your users on the DrZzs Discord, which is a fabulous place. And one of those, CB Rock, reached out to me and said, "Hey, we got these new blueprints. Why don't you maybe check that out?" And at the time, I'd already, like, I saw the announcement, right? And like, hey, this is cool, and it allows you to create like the shell of a single automation and then share that out for users, and they can deploy it 10 times if they've got 10 different things to do with the same one automation. And my thought process was, I've got the exact opposite, right? I don't have one automation that I need 10 of. I've got 200 automations that I need to send out at once. And I don't know that anyone's going to go out and import 200 blueprints and then go and publish all of them. And like, that didn't seem workable. And so I, nicely said, CB Rock, I appreciate, the input. But nah, this can never possibly work. And then went on about, making page 3 with another 2,000 lines of YAML, and like, this is definitely going to work. And it was, starting to become, well, let's just say that blueprint idea kept coming back into my head, because every time I look back at these YAMLs and they're getting worse and worse. And so I kind of dug back into it, tried a few of them out, and it just didn't make any sense to me. I reached back out to CB Rock and I said, like, I can't get this thought out of my head. Tried it again. I still don't think it's going to work, but I'll keep it in mind. Long story longer here. It took me a third time, and this is over the span of maybe about 2 months. And I like, what? Let me just dig into this and see if there's some value I can extract from it. And really, what it took for me is a different understanding of how to use automations within Home Assistant. They've added some of the scripting capabilities into this blueprint such that one can trigger on a bunch of different things and then follow different paths through an automation based on the trigger that started the whole thing. And so instead of having 20 automations to do one button, I can make one automation that had 20 different things that it did. And when the device connected, put some text on the button. When someone pushes the button, do this thing. When pages flip, when someone changes the theme, when someone releases the button, when thing that was written on if it was the weather that was placed on the button and the weather changes, put the new weather on the button, like all of those things, right? And
Each was
so
different.
for any one button, there's a lot of things that can happen there, right? And Turns out that blueprints work just fine. They worked just fine from day one. CB Rock was totally right. And had I just spent some more time and really understood what was going on, we might have had this a little bit sooner. But I'm a little bit glad we waited, because while I was working on all that other stuff, I was continuing to improve the firmware, and I think the firmware really is in a good place right now. So the results are going to be good. We have some new features that are coming in March. If you're running Dev Container right now, you have some access to that. And the reason we have these new features is because one of the new hires at Nabu Casa, this super great guy, Eric Memory, I believe his last name is. I hope, Eric, I'm not slaughtering your name there. But he reached out to myself and someone else I'm working with, and essentially just, what can we do? How, we notice you asking some questions and having some trouble with some of these blueprint features. What can we add to blueprints and templates to make your project work better? And that blew my mind. Like, just that happened was astounding. This is an open source product, right? Like, they don't have to reach out to people developing adjacent products and say, how do we make your life better, and then have us go spend a lot of time on our product to make that happen, right? But he did. We're seeing some of those features already, and a couple of them are coming in the next release, and they're really going to improve performance on this whole thing. How's our LCD looking?
It's done. It's ready.
All right, yeah, I know.
Ready.
If I just started talking, eventually
I didn't want to stop you. I wanted to let everybody hear the history, because I think it's awesome. But yeah, we're in here. We've got it connected, and it's given me a little bit of feedback here. It says it's connected to MQTT and connected to the network, and we are ready to go.
Sweet, you are ready to go. Okay, so then the next step here is step 5 on that page I sent you, which is to grab a blueprint.
Oh boy.
And so right there, I have a URL that you can grab, import core blueprints. And so for every HASP device that you deploy, it's going to have at least one blueprint. And it's called core functionality, right? And it's just all the basic stuff that makes HASP work. And so it looks like you might have already looked at blueprints, because you're navigating right there. So go to our list of blueprints. It looks like you got some right now. We'll do some import. We'll spam that guy in there. Take a look. And you'll see some information about it, right? There should be the February release now supports Markdown. So I can put pictures and examples, and if you hit details there, you get some breakdown of what all the various fonts look like and all this stuff. So but I said I haven't got the documentation nailed down yet. It's all the other documentation I need to do, because as you write the blueprints, you could put all the documentation for the blueprint right inside the blueprint. And so when you go and use it, you've got everything you need to know about this one specific blueprint right in front of you.
Okay.
So I'll say, let's go ahead.
That blueprint.
Yeah, we'll import that guy.
Okay.
And then you're going to create an automation for it.
Okay. Oh, let's get rid of this. We don't need that screen right now. Okay. So here it is. HASP core functionality. I guess, do we just leave? We can leave the name.
You can go ahead and just leave it there. So here's one thing I've been doing. So if you have multiple plates, I've been putting it after the word HASP. Right? So like HASP tower or HASP something, because when you get a bunch of these deployed, they're all going to have the same names on it. So it is helpful on that one. I'll just give it, and we'll see in the next one another place where we do it. So we'll call that desk. There you go. Easy enough. Okay. And then the only thing we need to do that you actually have to do here, if you scroll down, they'll see the HASP device. If you hit the down arrow next to HASP device, you should have a so just there you go, and your desk should show up.
Okay.
I'm hoping that happened because we got the leg on the screen, so I'm just trusting that that's there. There you go, desk connected. You're seeing another thing connected, right? That's not a HASP. That's one of the things that's coming in March. We're going to be able to select just HASP devices, which is another new feature. Thank you, Nabu Casa. So there we go. And just with that, that's all you actually have to do is hit set. Holy cow.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Minnesota, man. Minnesota Mint Tat. Thank you, man. Thanks a lot. That's a new name. I haven't seen you in the stream before, so welcome and thanks.
Sounds like a Dune fan. All right. Looking forward to the new movie. All right.
Oh, finally. All right.
So let's say save on this. We'll just take it as it is, and then we'll talk about
Okay.
some of the options here. If you do save, and this will be the process you need for all of these blueprints. You'll hit save, and then all the way back at the top, you have to hit execute.
Right there. Execute. Oh,
And then
it's doing some stuff over here on the screen.
There we go. All right, execute. Then yeah, you should now have page 1 with a little page flipping numbers on your
Oh yeah.
display. And
there it goes. Page 1, page 2, page 3.
Okay, there we go. All right. Yep, reboots the device, and there we go.
Okay, awesome.
Oh, all right. And so if we go back to the web page, I'm going to do one thing real quick, and we're going to give ourselves an 8 times increase in performance.
Oh, let's do the speed.
Yeah, this is a
we're
good
gonna
one.
pump
So
in
if you
some
bring
turbo. Let's do it.
The core web page back here, hit turbo mode. So if you scroll down, you see where it says LCD serial speed.
Yep.
That only showed up because it detected you've got the new LCD firmware and you're running the new HASP firmware, right? And so once those two things are true, now you can crank it all the way up to 92.16. I would also, yeah, baby, I would also disable USB serial debug. If you don't have this plugged into your computer, spitting out all the debug messages is time consuming. And so if you just check that off, hit save settings. And what we found is with that enabled, I've seen boot times under 2 seconds. It's a big, big difference in performance. And I think we just caught it on camera. Like it flipped over and it went just screaming into the update. Yeah, so that's a good one. Anyway, that's it. That's all you have to do on these pages anymore.
Oh yeah, look how much faster that was. That was way faster. Awesome. Vroom, vroom, vroom. Hey, we got somebody here that said they're intimidated simply by the organization in the background of your shop. We talked about
that's
that
actually
yesterday,
another project of mine. I'll paste a link to the GitHub. I have almost 300 custom pegboard models for hanging clamps and tools and everything else like that. When I'm not busy screwing around with this stuff, there's other things.
Are you sure you have a day job? Are you sure? How do you do this? I thought I did a lot of stuff. You're insane.
Yeah, the joys of working remote. So that's yeah.
Oh man.
Okay. All right. So we have a blueprint deployed, right?
We do.
And with everything in place, you are now ready to rock and customize HASP to do what you want. So that last link in that post there.
Okay. Number 6 now we down to? Deploy core blueprint. Oh no, we did that. So we did number 6.
Yeah, if you go deploy additional blueprints, follow that link, and that's going to GitHub repo.
Oh, right there.
It's just after 6. Yep, there you go.
Okay.
And that will take you to all the blueprints that are currently out there today.
I'm there.
Why are we only seeing README? Those are the files.
View code, maybe? View code. I had to hit view code. Now it's all there.
Okay, great. All right. So let's take I'll say a simple one near the top there. You've got a display calendar with icon.
Beauty.
So we'll display a calendar just as an example. If you just right click on that guy and say copy shortcut or copy link.
Copy link address. Okay.
Yep. And then we're going to import it.
As a blueprint. So go back to the import blueprint page, right? Yep. Paste that in. Okay, there it is. Import. I want to look and see what else you got in here. So here's some more instruction stuff, right? This just kind of tells you what it's doing.
And you got a little screenshot. Shows you what it's going to look like, right?
Yeah. Okay.
And,
okay.
We can go ahead and say import it.
And
then it's still automation. A truckload of YAML, right? Like as you scroll through that list, like, oh my God.
But I don't have to touch it.
You don't have to touch it, right? You could just ignore all the YAML. So it's still my problem. But Exactly. Yep.
Okay.
All right. And so then we'll go ahead and deploy one of these, right? And if you do a create automation on that.
Should I
So once
change the
again,
name?
yeah, so here's the deal. The way this is generally going to work is the HA switch plate has 11 pages. Each of those pages has a set of buttons, and those I created for you, right? So they're just kind of set in stone, and it's how the next gen environment generally works. If you hit the details under HASP page and button reference, you will see a couple of the first 3 pages as to what they look like. They're all the same. And the reason it's only showing you 3 pages is because this specific blueprint requires a full width button, right? And so I've set it so it only works on pages 1 through 3, because pages 4 through 11 don't have buttons that quite align with what we need for this, right? So other blueprints will have other pages available just depending on what they're doing. So we've got a description that shows us a picture of what we're doing. We've got a map of pages which might be available for us. And then the step one is always going to be select the HASP that we want to work with. And so for all of these blueprints, you're always going to have to pick, okay, so, select a HASP. And then there'll be a bunch of other defaults. So we could just save and, execute, but we'll talk about what these items do. So you select your HASP there. And then we've got the page, right? Page 1, 2, and 3, because that's what this blueprint supports. Some other ones will, support other pages. And then which of the buttons, 4 through 7. And if you look at that page or that screenshot above there, you'll see it says B4, B5, B6, B7. It will show you where that button is, right? And then just save and execute.
So if I go to, let's just for kicksies, we'll put it on page 2.
Okay.
And we'll put this says B4, B5, B6, B7. So let's put it on 7. Okay, so this will go on the very bottom box on the second page of my HASP. That's where this will go.
You got it. Yep.
Okay.
And if you scroll up to the name, and then you see where it says PXBY,
yeah.
I like to fill in the button values there.
Oh.
Again, it's just like once you have 20 of these deployed, and hopefully you will, right? You can have many pages of these. It's easier to go and figure out, right, which one's which. So I'm like, I want to change this one on page 3. They're all called XY. At some point, it is on the roadmap that I'll be able to put in like a hint as to what the name should be based on things that you've selected. And so I hope we'll be able to do that automatically at some point in the future. But right now, I think it's just easier to type in the name so you can figure it out later what you're doing.
Okay, so I saved it, executed it. And when I go look at my list of blueprints, if I want to change something here, I'm going to see desk, page 2, button 7.
Exactly.
Okay.
And after you hit that execute, and there you go.
There it is. There's my icon, and there's my date. All right. And it's only on that page. If I go to page 1, fat fingers, page 3, not there. Okay. Sweet.
All right. So there's something else that happened when we deployed that core blueprint. You'll notice you have a few notifications down there.
Yes, I do.
If you pop open your Home Assistant notifications,
okay.
You should have one from me about your desk.
Desk Lovelace Entities card.
There you go. And so what I've done is I've created an entities card, which give you a bunch of stuff that could be useful for you. So if you highlight all that YAML, there's no way to programmatically stuff things into Lovelace, right? But what I can do is give you all the code. And so this will just give you a quick card that will show you all the things you want to make sure you get the space up in there you go. All right.
Yeah. Okay.
And
so now I can go to Lovelace.
Copy. Yep. There you go. Then instead of pages full of cards, it's just one card that's got, kind of the basics.
And then you just go to make a manual card in Lovelace, which I'm doing right now.
Yep. Man, you're
all right.
You're Lovelace.
We beat the Buckeyes. Yes. Do you see that? I didn't watch the game yet, but I just saw the score. Right, there you go. I just saw the score. It's in my calendar.
Yes. All right.
Oops, I just
sorry,
missed that.
all of your Ohio viewers, but all right.
Okay, let's see. Manual,
So-
and then we're going to click that. I got that messed up. Okay, then now we're going to go to here, and we're just going to paste all that in. Paste it all in. Okay, and there it is. Wow.
So that's it.
going
Nice
to
and easy.
show up right here. Here we go, and desk backlight. So I can turn it off, and if you look at that's turning off the desk backlight. And then foreground, what does that do? Oh, does this change the color? What?
Right. So we've got 4 different theme elements we can apply. And this is a next gen thing. They call selected and unselected, foreground and background. And so for most buttons, that's when you push it in, it becomes unselected versus selected, right? And which is a little bit counterintuitive, but the short version is this is really straightforward. You can go in, you can monkey with the colors. I'll note that any button which doesn't have a blueprint assigned to it, which right now is all of the buttons you see on the screen. If you flip over to page 2, I think where you put that button, this will make a little more sense because it's also theming the calendar that you created. Then as more blueprints get applied, they all accept this theme information. So if you change like the selected background, I think is going to be the one that's probably the most visible.
Whoa, yes, there it is.
Yeah, all right.
Oh, wow.
And there are blueprints for a couple themes, right? And so this can also be a blueprint that will just set up these values, but you can go bananas, right? It's pretty straightforward
Oh,
here.
man, that is
I like sometimes
so much
take a softer
easier.
tones in some rooms. Yeah,
That is just crazy how much easier that is than it used to be. Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
fast and responsive, and it's all just clicky, right? You don't no more screwing around with love
Oh, and
VS Code. Play with
I can
YAML all day.
switch. I can switch which page is active here as well,
Yes,
all the way up to 11.
it actually will go all the way up to 100 because of the way that the
Oh,
MQTT number component doesn't allow you to put a
a
limit
limit
on
on
it.
it.
But yeah,
All
I don't want to
right.
complain too hard. It's a great feature. So we'll just leave it as is.
Sweet. Okay, let's import some more. I'm excited. Let's import some more.
Yeah.
Turn it up to 11.
So yeah, absolutely. Do you use scenes today? Is that a thing that you use in your house?
Not very much. I don't. But
Okay,
we
so
could
like
still do it
there's
because
quick
probably a lot
buttons
of
for
people
doing that,
do.
but we could do. Yeah, I was gonna say if you have a light nearby, we can do a light control.
Oh
That
yeah,
would be
we
an
can do
easy
that.
one.
Let's do a
So
light control.
let's grab one of the toggles.
Okay. So we're
So this is
going
one that's
back
going to be
to the
go back to that
GitHub.
GitHub.
Okay. And we're going to right click on one of the toggles. So
Say you do display toggle. It's all the way at the bottom of your screen there. There you go.
display toggle. Great. Right click, copy link address, go back to Home Assistant, go back to the configuration and blueprints. This is not my Home Assistant Blue, so it's not running as fast as this is my bogged down old experimental. It's been my experimental production. I guess I just don't bother making experiments. It's gotten bad. Okay, import blueprint, and then we're gonna paste that in. This is the display toggle, and that's it. You just hit enter, pops it up. We can look at what it's gonna do, but we're just gonna import that sucker, and then we go find it here. Okay, create automation.
There you go. And you got the hang of this.
I'm getting it. I'm flying. And then we're going to call it desk. And then we'll do page 1. And we will make it, let's see. Oh, entity. I need to pick the desk HASP entity, right? right there, disk. Okay, and then which page? We're going to put it on the page 1, and we're going to do the button. The top button was, let's see, I bet you it shows
4.
on your button here.
It turns out, yeah, it does. Yeah. So you got it. So if you hit that page and button reference, this one can work on all of your pages, right? So you're going to have
Look at
all
that.
of them showing up.
Awesome. So if I wanted to
Yep.
use like page 9 or page 10 or page 11, this is what the button layout looks like. So you can refer to this and say, oh, I want all these buttons on one of my displays because I have really narrow fingers. and so you can go here and you say, oh, I want this on button 12 or something else on button 11 or something else on button 10. All right. Well, we're going to do page
Some
1,
of those, right?
button 4.
The reason that page 1 is set up with 4 buttons, top to bottom like that, is because 5 buttons I couldn't reliably hit with my fat smooshy fingers. And so that was it. I tested a bunch, and like that was what I arrived at. The page buttons were as small as I could reliably.
I remember this. I remember this story somebody told about why the moon lander was a certain size, right? So you're talking about this thing we launched to the moon and it lands, and why is it this particular size? Why did they make it that size? And they go back through the whole thing of getting it in the shuttle and getting it on a train and the width of the train tracks, and it all came back to the width of 2 ox butts. That's why the moon lander is a certain size, is because that's about as big as 2 butts of 2 oxen. So anyways.
We live in a weird place, man.
Okay.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Like, there's a lot of this stuff has just been experiential testing, right? So it's just, what can we
whatever the width of your fingers is, that's why there's 4 buttons. All right. So now I can go entity to toggle, and I can scroll down here. We want to say maybe
toggle a light.
So, and I can search this, I assume.
I don't know if you can start typing and have it show in there. I think you might be able to.
You can. Yep. I can do switch.office, and there it goes. Sweet.
Okay, very good.
All right. So we're going to set this to the office light right there. Oh, not office heat. Office light there.
All right. Now, this is one of these blueprints. I'll say that there's a lot of complexity hiding beneath it, right? And I tried to kind of provide a lot of sensible defaults. And in your case, most of those defaults are going to work here. But this can toggle basically anything, right? And so anything that might have one state and you can change that state, we can turn into one of these toggles. And so we have I'll just go down the list, right? So we got entity attribute or state to monitor. Now, a light, when you turn a light on and off in Home Assistant or a switch device, the state goes from on to off and then back to on again. Okay, no problem, right? You might want to toggle one of the, what triggered a lot of this was a user trying to switch a fan between 3 different speeds. And the fan would be on or off, but the speed is an attribute, not a state. And so instead of state, one could put fan underscore speed, which happens to be the attribute that you want to watch. And that's what it's going to determine whether something is on or off, right? And then so the entity state to be considered on, it's just going to text string match this. So you've got a light switch device. We're going to watch the state. When the state is ON, case insensitive, we're going to consider that it is on. Right? And so you can type in any text you want, and it's just going to match those things, based on that state. All right, now, how do you turn a light on? Well, you hit the add action there. This add action is going to look just like your automation. It's actually the exact same workflow.
Oh yeah, it is.
So if you hit that button, yeah, right. So just like making automations like you used to. So you could do a Home Assistant that turn on, or switch that turn on, or device, whatever you want to do, right? So you've got a bunch of ways to turn on lights in Home Assistant.
This is all going slow, and I am sure it's just my poor Home Assistant. All right, and now I can select the device. Oop. All right, and I'm gonna the same device. Oops. Oh, you know what? It might not show up as a device. It's not a whole
Yeah,
device.
I was gonna say device is a tricky
Yeah,
one. There's some
yeah,
things that
yeah.
are required. If you just do a
I just do call
service call,
service.
there you
Yeah,
go. Yeah,
just do call service.
that's gonna be the easiest one by a while.
And then the service is gonna be switch turn on.
Yeah.
Okay. Or switch toggle. We want switch toggle. Okay.
I will say on. To make it switch turn on because you're going to
Oh,
have two
okay.
of these. One that's going to turn on and one that's going to turn off.
Oh, okay. Oh, I see. So you got action to turn on, action to turn off. Okay, great. So
Right.
switch turn
Because it
on.
might not be a toggle. We're turning anything into a toggle, right? And so the if you have the toggle capability, great. You probably don't need this to make it happen, but we have the ability to turn this into a lot of different goofy use cases. So you select your entities there. And like I said, this could be any action, right? I want to send an MQTT message. It could be a string of actions. You can just keep adding actions to this. So when I press this button to turn something on, like I could do this with my truck. You mentioned you liked my car. I have to admit I sold that like 3 years ago. Moved out to the burbs and bought an F-150, like the most American sequence of events. Um, but hey, it came with this shop. So,
Well,
so yeah,
and
I'll
an
take it.
F-150 is not exactly an ugly thing either. And those things are pretty dang nice too.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. It doesn't quite get up and move like the Challenger, but it's all right. Yeah. So, but like I could say, hey, toggle, I want to open my garage doors. I want to wait 60 seconds to make sure that that's open. And then I want to start my truck through Ford Pass. And that would be the toggle my truck on. So I could have a whole sequence of events that are related. One is opening a cover entity, one's sending a service out to Ford Pass, one's a delay or what have you, right? But this could be a whole string of events that result in this device being considered on. So if you work
okay.
with like Harmony home or AV remotes, similar thing. Turn on the TV, set the input to whatever, turn on the Roku, launch this particular, whatever. Okay, now Netflix is on. And you could do the same
Got
thing
it.
in the off, going back the other direction. Okay, how do I turn off Netflix? Well, it might just be turn off the TV or turn off the TV and the AV receiver. I don't care if Roku switched or whatever, right? So we'll do the exact same thing and turn off, but just with switch.turn_off.
And I don't need anything under service data because this is all it needs when I'm doing something this simple. Turn on light.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you need it, it's there, right? You can go and do all the custom service data. This is where the developer tools services uh, web interface is helpful. You can go test service calls and monkey around with it, get it to you like it, and then you can literally just copy it and paste it here. It's the same format.
Okay. Call service and then switch turn off. And then the entity. I have a horrible delay. That's okay. Switch.office light. Right there.
Much
Okay.
like
So
you,
now
much
we
like
got
you,
that.
my home assistant installation is getting crusty and old, and it's
It's
about
getting
time to
bogged
get
down.
wiped out. There. Yeah.
Okay. And then let's see. Text to display when the entity is on. Oh,
And so
so
just
then
what
I
do you
can
want to call
edit
it?
this. I
Yep.
can just say,
And you might want to say something like office off, right? Because the light is on, and when you push that button, the act of pushing it is going to toggle it off.
oh, I see what you're saying.
It just depends. You see what I'm saying, right? Like
How you're
so,
using
just kind
it.
of your mental model, how you want to say, or you could just say office lights for both. Maybe you don't want it to
Oh,
change
right.
when what I'm saying, right? Like you could just be whatever.
Because the colors are going to tell you if it's on or off. The colors on the button.
Correct. Yep. Or the fact that the lights are on or off is another good
I
indicator.
might be aware of that sometimes.
Yeah. So whatever. So like I said, we've got all these features, but you don't have to use them, right? If you don't want the text to toggle around, no problem.
And
And so
then
then we have the
this,
ability, like I said, to adjust colors, right? The -1 will just use your selected foreground and background and then unselected foreground and background. So if you
Okay.
have a theme set up, this is probably what you're going to want to use, because then it'll
Yeah.
match the rest of your buttons.
Yeah.
And you can just go change your theme colors and it will apply to all of these in some
Right.
consistent way.
If you start monkeying with this, then you're going to have to go back and change the color for each button if you wanted to change it, if you didn't want to use the whole selector. Okay.
Yeah, exactly that, right? Like, so this just kind of ties it to your theme, which is helpful in most cases, I'll say. The other thing that I'll just note about that is that these are next-gen color codes, which are a little weird, right? It's in what's called RGB 565. It's unusual, I will say. I did provide, if you scroll all the way to the top, you'll see the next-gen color codes.
Right there.
And so I just threw a table of just like, here's some basics. If you just want something to be red, here's the number for red, right? So there is a quick reference, and then there's also a link in there. You see that handy converter it's a website where, with a color picker, and you can go. So if you're in a position where you do want to go and start screwing around with colors, I strongly encourage you to go just track down that website. You get a normal color picker, you can use RGB, and at the end of it, you get that next gen HMI number, is that 5-digit number.
And you can put that in here. You can put that in here. But you can just make it simple and just stick with the Lovelace card that you made, and we can just color wheel, pick the colors, and you get the colors you want right from there.
Right? Exactly that. Yeah, you got it. Okay. All right, and then we can change fonts there, right? And you saw the font list there. There's 10 different fonts, and they're mostly just different sizes.
Right? And then here you go. This is just what it is. Okay. Okay.
And so if you set it to 4, I think you're going to get a pretty tiny one. The Office Lights will probably fit. Font 8 will be a nice big size.
Okay. Awesome.
And then do we want it, we can left align it, we can right alignment, we can align it to the top of the button or the bottom of the button. We can turn on text wrapping. I want to be careful about text wrapping. I'll note that it isn't word wrapping. It'll hack it off in the middle of a word. Right? So if it's a next gen feature, I'm just surfacing what exists underneath. And so
then if you were using, like, there was the one button, like button 11, that was just a big, huge button. You've got vertical alignment as well. So you can go to the top, you can go to the bottom, and go in the center. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. And so we just hit save and then execute. Then you should have Office Lights toggle on your HASP. So a question came up in your chat here about supporting additional languages like Hebrew. Sadly, the answer is very unlikely. And the reason for that is very limited space, right? It is still, at the end of the day, there's a $1 microcontroller that lives underneath this. And fonts are all bitmapped. And so for those 10 fonts, I have to have 10 copies of every character, one in each size, which means adding things like Unicode or like material design icon set, which I would love to have in this project, right? Or just this a super wide Unicode set, so I could get Hebrew letters or Bengalese or Thai or whatever in there, right? I think that would be really sweet, but it's just, sadly, it's going to be impractical in this project. So unfortunately, the answer is probably going to be no on that. There you go. You got Office Light. And I was wrong. So I told you to hit font 8, and it looks like you might have already figured that out. And so if you knock it back down to font 7, you might fit it in there. Here we go.
I just changed it to fan light, and then if I hit this, fan light goes off in my office, fan light comes back on. And that's snappy.
Yeah. Right? And so it changes the color theme to match there. I know, right? Like, so remember all of this YAML and everything else, and like the struggle. Then you had to reboot Home Assistant after every package update just to test if it worked, right? Oh,
I can't tell you how good this feels. I'm so excited about
it. It was so bad. This is so much better.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So let's do. We could do this for a long time still, and I will spend most of the rest of today, unfortunately, doing this. I've seen a ton of questions.
Yeah.
I want to see if we need to get to some of these. So I have a good
Yeah, that's
system
perfect.
here.
Okay, perfect.
I have a good system
'Cause
here
I don't.
for
I've not been watching.
okay, I have some saved thanks to Sir Goodenough and everybody using the tilde ask thing in the chat. So let's see what we got here. And I'm going to skip ones that aren't HA Switchplate related right now. So this one is probably one you sort of already answered. This is without the UL listed approval on the HA Switchplate, what could cause the greatest risk of a house fire? I asked because of the disclaimer and looking to increase the wife approval rating. I think what you mentioned, right, with using the circuit board that has the division between, the fiberglass is cut so that it's not going to creep and short onto the low voltage side and cause heat and fire.
Yes.
Right. So
Yeah.
so the biggest risk is probably there.
Absolutely. I will say, follow the bill of materials. There's a reason why everything is the way it is. There are no holes in the enclosure. The grommets prevent any other wires from maybe sticking in. No conductors are exposed. That there's affordance for that 120 volt creep. That's also the reason why this project doesn't actually switch anything. It doesn't turn a light on and off, right? It can't have a load wired into it and then turn that light on and off directly, right? And a lot of that is just for safety reasons. There are a lot of ways if you're handling a high current load for things to go wrong. And so I just thought it was best to avoid it. And so we've got get the PCB. The PCB can only work with the power supply I spec, right? You can't get an off-brand Chinese one because the footprint won't match. So you will then be spending all of a princely $5. They're still inexpensive, but it's from a high quality. You can get it from DG and Mouser and whatever else power supply that isn't going to blow up. It's got overcurrent protection, a self-resetting fuse. And just in general is going to do all those things to keep you safe. Now, it's still not UL listed. Right? Take what you will from that. That doesn't carry a lot of weight these days, but it is, just what it is. So I share your concerns. What I really try hard not to kill my users while they're sleeping, along with all of their family and everything they love. It's a bad look, and so yeah, I think that's really important. And I will say, just it is possible to build this on a proto board. Don't get the PCB. If you're going to buy one thing for this project, make sure it's a PCB.
Someone asked about a dimmer. Is there a dimmer, like a slider? And it's Madrian. Hey man, how are you been? And yes, there is. And so I just, as you were explaining that part, I jumped into the GitHub. I grabbed the slider YAML URL. I popped it into the blueprints, imported it as a blueprint, and I was just getting started with making it into the automation. So we're going to select
all while I'm yammering
here
on about a circuit board, right? And so what I'll point out with that whole thing is no one needed to tell you how to do that, right? Like you've done 2 blueprints and now you've got it.
Yep. Somebody says
Fantastic.
Here, when I try to update the firmware, it fails to upgrade, and I see last reset fatal exception, and then a bunch of goobly-god. Do you see that there in the chat?
So what I would encourage you to do, I do, make sure you are completely erasing the device. What we have found that there have been occasions where if you didn't do a full erase of the device first, that would get stuck in this boot loop. And I'm not sure what's going on with that, but it is unfortunately a common ESP8266 under the Arduino packages thing. So let me see if I can link. There's a flashing tool for Tasmoda, I think that has that function built in, and it's just really handy.
And I'm gonna grab.
I'll post that on your Discord, and once we get that.
Awesome.
So yes, just make sure you wipe out the whole thing. If you've got the Arduino IDE open, you can just do a forceful erase, and that will make it happen too.
HASP button text off. Text on. Oh, look at this. So in this case, for the dimmer, you have it as the you've got the off just referencing the on. So the text doesn't change, whether it's on or off. For the slider, It looks like. Yeah, I see you got this little template guy in there. Okay.
So,
I don't know how big this is going to be. I'm just going to play around with it a little bit. And we're just going to go with that.
all right, I found that link, and I'm going to... Where's a good place that all the users will be able to see this?
If you post it in the chat.
In Discord?
Yeah, if you post it in the chat, I think all the links go to a specific spot. And it will be in Discord. All the chat that's here will be in Discord for people to get to later if they want. And then... All right, and execute this.
Okay, there's a few more things here. Someone mentioned about neutral. It definitely requires a neutral. I said it doesn't switch a load. So if you're taking out a light switch, you need to deal with that some way. What I found is that the enclosure is small enough that like the nano dimmers you get from like Shelly and AOTech and those sorts of things, it's just those little tiny ones, still fit in the box. So you can have the HASP. You might be able to find that you can fit the HASP and a dimmer into that same box, but you are going to need a neutral.
I was able to, I mean, like that was part of what in fact, what you're describing is exactly what I had. Oh, now that this is so dark, but anyways, with this thing here, which I just 3D printed a plate and I had this, and this was just floating in the box. And then also in this box, I had a Shelly 2 that just had, it was connected to the two circuits that used to be in this, that used to be light switches that took up this, this box. So instead of those 2 light switches, I had this, which just gave me a display, and it did a bunch of other things besides just switch those 2 circuits that were in that box. And I grabbed power from that circuit, but to power this, but this thing was controlling lights outside and a whole bunch of other stuff. So.
Yeah. And I'll also mention the PCB has a neat feature that there's some alternative footprints. If you have DC power available or PoE, there's a line of similar power supplies from Meanwell. And so you have to rotate it. Like there's just another set of pins. And so instead of the big block, you'll have kind of a rotated 90 degrees version. And there's 3 or 4 of them that can go from, I want to say 0 to 96 volts, depending on which one of the models you get. So there's just a lot of DC options, right? You can power it via USB. You can power it via AC from 100 to I think 350 volts. This thing will take 50, 60 hertz. So anywhere in the world. And then there's some DC options too, if you got some low voltage.
Somebody had asked about different displays. Somebody said, what if you're using a TJC screens?
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about that a little bit. And we'll go into this in a little bit more depth, but the NextGen company is the worldwide distributor for the Chinese company TJC. And so TJC displays are the exact same displays, but they're only sold in mainland China. And then NextGen, the company, is responsible for taking those, rebranding them, and selling them outside of mainland China. The difference, unfortunately, is that if you download the NextGen editor, which conveniently is in English, it will not program the TJC displays. And the reverse is also true. If you have the TJC editor, it is all in Chinese, and it won't take a NextGen project and turn it into Chinese, which is a little frustrating. So what I've been doing is, actually the very first versions of it, I opened the US editor, and then on another screen, I opened the Chinese editor. Fortunately, the buttons are in the same place. I spent the next several days recreating the document. I just, okay, where is the button? It's over here because I can see the label in English. It's in the same place in the Chinese version, and just built the whole thing from the ground up in Chinese. That wasn't fun, but it did allow those people who mistakenly bought the TJC device to use the project, right? Since then, myself and, well, actually, I want to say, I don't want to claim any credit for this. There's been a group of really smart people. This is really, it's hard to explain how difficult NextGen, the company, is to work with. They really don't like us. Like they'll say right away, they do not like open source. They think open source is a joke. Why would any real programmer ever do something open source? Um, if you post any questions that they don't like on their forums, they'll ban you, delete your account, or worse, and this is the part that drives me nuts, they will change the things that you say. They'll go and just edit your text to say things that they like, and then ban you.
Wow.
Like
Wow.
it's weird. Like it is
Wow.
just the most hard to understand business model I've ever seen in my life. So because it was difficult and you couldn't ask any real questions there, right? Just because of the weird way that they handle things, I opened a new Nextgen forum. And so there's a lot of users now, kind of a community that's wrapped around the people that are using Nextgen that have had the misfortune of interacting with Nextgen, the organization, have now all landed on this website. Now, some of these smart folks put together a converter so that one can reverse the CRC that's used in the Nextgen project and turn it into a TJC compatible project. And so now that I have that in hand, every time I push an update, I'm also putting out a TJC version. And so you'll see that HA Switchplate -TJC in the GitHub, and you can use that version and it will be the exact same. So everything, that's a long-winded version of what's going on there, and that will also fit into something that we'll talk about here in just a bit. But I saw another question come through chat. Will this work on something that isn't a Nextgen display? Nextgen and TJC only right now. And for this project, for HASP that exists, it's Nextgen at its core, right? Like it is a fundamental ground-up rewrite, including writing all the things that took Nextgen years and a team of developers to recreate on something that isn't Nextgen. So HASP one is just, you have to have one of those two devices.
Yeah, just get the Nextgen ones. I guess TJC if you make that mistake, maybe, but that'll work.
Yeah, and I'll also say follow the bill of materials, because there are other Nextgen 2.4 devices that add additional features which we don't use. And they also add things that interfere with the enclosure. Like there's a battery holder for an RTC, which the project doesn't use, and makes it so you can't assemble the project anymore. So if you go on Amazon, you'll say, hey, there's an enhanced version. Well, I want the enhanced version. No, you don't. You want the basic version. Just buy it's cheaper. It does all the things. You will get no additional benefit, and it will actually work, as opposed to the enhanced version where it won't. But because I know some people have done it, I also publish enhanced versions too, and that works through the update mechanism as well. And so, through the auto updates, whether you have a TJC or the one I told you to buy and you should still buy, or the enhanced one, it will take all of those, and they keep getting published as we move this project forward.
Related question, and I know you've answered this before, but I want to hear what you have to say, is why just the 2.4-inch screen, and can this work if you have a bigger than the 2.4-inch Nextgen screen?
So several users have done it. So why 2.4 is that conversation we started this whole thing off with when I was looking at my wall. I noticed that there was an empty, plate that needed something in it, and those screws are kind of dictate how big a thing you can fit between them. And so if you want to be able to put screws to the front and not drill them through the glass of your LCD, then whatever you're going to put in there has to fit between those two screws. And so that's why the Nextgen 2.4, right? And it just happens to be the perfect size for that kind of use case. Can you make bigger ones? Absolutely, yes. However, right, you will need to go back and modify the source file. The way that the Nextgen development environment works, it's very pixel oriented, right? And this is true of most embedded systems. It doesn't have this sweet notion that we have in Windows or even on our mobile devices like iOS, where they can handle screen scaling and whatever else. That takes a lot of grunt that these devices don't have. And so, the code is for that 2.4 size. Can you make it bigger? Yes. There's a free drag and drop editor from Nextgen that you can just download. The fact that it's free is extremely unusual from these people, so be thankful. It's not open source and it won't ever be, so don't ask them. They get really mad about it. And you could go in and you can change the size. Then all the buttons are going to be in the wrong place. Like they're all going to be in the bottom left corner. And so then you need to resize all the elements on all 11 pages. And then most of the project will work. There are a couple of things where I'm doing manual positioning of some elements, like that calendar you had with the icon. To make that work, I paint the text, wait a half a second, and then I push the icon and in the correct place on the screen. And for that to work, the blueprint makes some assumptions as to where the correct place is on the screen. And those assumptions aren't going to be true once you go to a 4-inch screen or whatever else, right? So again, long-winded way of saying yes, you can. However, you're kind of on your own, right? Most of the blueprints will work. You'll be able to do this, but there's going to be some legwork to make it work with a larger display.
I'm just
One
having
more
fun
thing
now. I'm just poking around.
that comes to mind: 7-inch or larger. They do make 10-inch ones. That will spill over the. It's a 600 milliamp power supply, of
Ooh.
which to maybe 200 or so is going to be used by the Wemos. And so the backlight on the larger displays spills over what that power supply is going to be able to handle as well. So you won't be able to use a PCB anymore either. It is the largest power supply on the Meanwell line that fits on that footprint. So I would say keep it under 7 inches if you are going to go in a large one.
And that, might mention too that when you do it like this, if you use this sort of desktop box for it, you're just powering with USB. You don't need that. You don't need the circuit board actually, and you don't need the power supply. You don't need this guy.
In fact, you can't. The desk exactly. The desk enclosure is a little bit narrower because it can be, because you don't need that power supply, and the power supply is kind of chunky. So if you are building just for desk, and it's really cool for desk.
Luma made this for me years ago. Right?
Oh yeah.
This is what you sent to me years ago. It's still here. Okay, let's see. Let's answer a couple more questions, and then we'll think about a few whatever other things you think are important to tell us here. So, turning this into a Stream Desk clone.
So yes, right. So the one thing that it doesn't do, because the ESP8266 does not do, is act as a USB host. So you would need some way to still deal with stuffing in keyboard commands and stuff like a Stream Deck would, right? But IoT Link for Home Assistant is an amazing project. It's a Windows tool that can hook your Windows desktop into Home Assistant. And so there are solutions like that where you can have Home Assistant control your PC, and thus, in HASP can interface with Home Assistant. It can talk to all the things Home Assistant can do. So, yes. So HASP to Home Assistant to something that controls your PC, and then you have a Stream Deck. There's a couple other items here. We got a Next-Gen 10-inch. As I mentioned, the 10-inch, you're going to have problems with power. It's still possible, but you're going to have to provide DC power on its own. M5 stack right now is a hard no, because the M5 stack does not use Next-Gen or TJC in any way. Right? It's also ESP32, which should work. It won't be pin compatible. You won't be able to use a PCB or anything, but the code would be able to fall over there. Let's see, snapshots from surveillance cameras. That's another no. The reason behind that is just that serial link between the device and the Next-Gen is still kind of skinny. And Next-Gen right now provides no support for feeding image data into it at runtime. Yeah. If you want to put a picture on it, you can, but you have to take the picture, put it into the Next-Gen visual editor, add it to the project, compile it, flash it to the device. Now that picture is on the device.
Yeah. So maybe for things like a background or an icon or something like that, yes. Exactly. But not something on the fly like somebody's at the front door or something like that.
Exactly that. Well, I mean, technically, yes. You could go take a picture of them while they stand in the dark, run back to your computer, compile it, write it to a flashcard, stick it in your HASP, and maybe like 10 minutes later, then you'll have their picture on the HASP. So, yes? Probably no.
Okay. No.
Was that a terrible answer? Yeah, no one wanted about it. Okay, someone asked about the older version of the PCBs. The only difference between the 04 version and what became the 10 version, the 04s are still safe. Right? All versions of the PCB that you might have bought from me have those, they call the AC voltage affordance. And so those slots are cut out. What has been added to the newer version is very simple. It's a switch. It's a transistor and a resistor. What that does is it allows the HASP project to turn. Yeah, so that's an older version of the
This
PCB,
is the
right?
old version. Yep.
And the only thing that's missing is the ability to. Is that thing plugged into your wall right now?
No.
Okay, I was gonna say, like, be very careful with your
No, no,
fingers
no,
right
no,
now.
no, 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 no.
I'm about
No.
freaking out watching you do this. Whoa, buddy! All right.
I do dumb things like that though. Don't think I don't.
A
Don't
few
think I don't.
120-volt lessons are, yeah, it's all right. And so, anyway, there, there's a possibility when you do the firmware update for the next gen. I've had that fail once or twice. It's rare. Like, I'll do it, 20 times and it'll be fine. The 21st time it might not complete. If that next gen process or firmware update fails, the only way you can reset it so you can try the firmware again is to reset power on the device. The next gen won't let me send a serial command that says, "Hey, I see you're all screwed up. Go ahead and reboot." Right? You have to cut power. And so if you've got one of these in your wall with that older version, then you have to go to the breaker and turn it off and turn it back on again, and then you can try the firmware update again. Right? The one thing we changed in the new version is a switch that allows the firmware to do that. So if a next gen update breaks, you can power cycle the display using that transistor and resistor that were added to the circuit board so that you can retry a firmware update. So it's not any safer. If you've got the 04 version, no need to go buy a new one or whatever else. The only thing that's different is that instant, recovery mode and the off chance that you've had a misflash on the next gen. So it's a real edge case thing. I wouldn't worry too much about it.
And it's connected to a pin on the D1 Mini here. So you do this through the web interface of the D1 Mini. You say power cycle the display with a button on that
Exactly.
user interface, and then it just uses these components and powers off and powers back on the display.
Exactly. It just cuts off the ground to the next gen, and it does that at boot time. It actually, I should be careful with that. It defaults off, and so when the code lights up, one of the pins on the D1 Mini activates that switch to turn the next gen on. So it's always off unless we do something to turn it on.
Gotcha. So tell me, what are some other things that you want to make sure we know or make sure you cover in this?
I think we've got
going thing.
Most of the big ones, right? And all of that is because it's just so much easier to deal with, right? Like once you have the blueprints rolled in, then you can just go bananas, right? So I will say just some concepts that'll be useful if you go and play with this. Some of those blueprints will put text on the button, right? It might not do anything else. Like you just want to know the weather, and it just put some text on top of a button. Some of those, like there's one that just triggers an action. If you remember on our toggle, you had that action list and you could set up a sequence of events, right? So a button triggers an action. That doesn't do anything to the screen. Yeah, perform action right there, right? So it doesn't put anything on the button at all. The button's just blank. But when you push it, it's going to do things. So what you can do is that you can stack multiples of these things onto the same button. Right. So I could have one thing that displays some text on the button, and then another blueprint which does things when you press the button. I will say the perform action along with display template, probably the two most powerful ones there. Display template allows you to put in just Jinja template code. It gets rendered, right, and then put on the screen. So that can tell you the weather. It can tell you if a light is on. It can tell you what the date is. Like just anything you can do with Jinja, which is basically anything, right? It can read values that Home Assistant knows about and puts them on the screen. And then, but it doesn't respond to input at all, right? When you push a button, nothing happens. Then the action is the other end of it. So, when someone pushes the button, then you have that whole automation editor, like we went through with the display toggle, that you could put a whole sequence of events in whenever someone pushes a button, go ahead and do this.
What is this? I see you got remove MQTT discovery devices.
That one's kind of just a development. Yeah. So some of these, when you put in this HASP, right, your desk HASP right now, when it comes online, it is publishing some retained messages to do things like create the 4 theme colors. Those are RGB color lights, which is why when you click on them, you get the color select interface, right? I didn't have to write any of that. I just created 4 lights that have color, and Home Assistant knows what to do with lights. And if you want to get rid of them, this can get rid of them. Right? It just gets rid of
Okay.
those discovery messages, right? So that's just kind of a, hey, I want to go ahead and delete something
Does
that
it
will do
delete?
that.
Is it just on these topics? It's just on the topics that you use in this.
Correct.
It's not like
Yeah.
a full on go through all of your discovered MQTT devices and clean out any that are old and lost.
Also correct. Yeah. So it'll be
It won't
just
do
on
that.
that one topic that you named.
And then you've got
Yeah.
here sleep when idle, dark light on theme. Just tell us what these ones are doing.
Yeah. So I just like some pre-canned themes, just like you were monkeying with. And so when you do a theme, dark on light or light on dark, when you execute it, it just sets those 4 values to a set of 4 that I, thought were cool when I made it, right? Just as an example. So one can make their own theme and publish it as a blueprint for others to use.
And
Sleep
you've
when
had
idle.
Go ahead.
To say sleep when idle allows the HASP or the Nextgen itself to go to sleep, which is like this low power state. I don't recommend it. What happens when you do that is it stops receiving updates. And so if you have a clock or a calendar or weather updates, those all stop. And then I have an option in that thing that says, okay, when it comes back, when someone goes and pushes the screen, so maybe it's in your bedroom and you just don't want it on at night. Right? You could say sleep when idle. You go up, you push it, it'll send all the updates that it missed, and then you can go ahead and interact with it. I have coming soon, and so this will be a nice segue. The next version of Home Assistant, some features that we requested, and the Nabu Casa guys and Eric specifically were kind enough to put in there, that will change the way a lot of these blueprints work in the back end. It's not going to make a lot of difference to the user, apart from the performance is going to be better. So we have to do some kind of ugly things right now with the way MQTT is handled. These devices are going to trigger a lot, like all these MQTT messages, whether they're intended for this device or not, are going to trigger. And then there's a piece that will, later in the automation, it's going to say, oh, this wasn't for me. Ignore it. Stop doing things, right? But it would be way better. And I'm running the dev. I can confirm it is, in fact, better if it was only listening for things that were intended for it. So that required a new feature to be added to blueprints. We've got that new feature. It's going to be huge. Love it. And so that is coming soon. And so there's another new thing that's coming with the way when you selected the HASP device, it showed you the connected binary sensor device. You also had your Ender 3D printer out there is also a connectivity binary sensor. It'll show you things that aren't HASP. If you happen to have similar devices out there in the world that are binary sensors, right? So now I'm going to be able to nail that down. So you'll just see HASP devices. I can go and have that be a thing. It'll also deal with things like renaming. So if you went and renamed some of your stuff, it'll handle that. Just some kind of bug fix sort of thing. You can get yourself into a weird position with some of these things, and it allows you to kind of back out of that in a more reasonable way. And that brings up another thing here too. So we're not making full use of the device and entity registry. So if you in Home Assistant go to devices and under configuration, you will now find your desk device under there, and then all the things that are tied into it. So you can see all the automations that are using it. You can see the 4 theme buttons, the background light, all the rest of it. And if you do a delete there, this is now how you can decommission this environment, is just by saying delete on the device, and it will go out and clean out all your automations and everything else.
So if I go here to devices and I search for desk, HA Switchplate desk, and then I can just get rid of it. Is that what you're saying?
Oh yeah, well just click on it right now. There you go. And now there's all the things, right?
Right.
And so you'll see the automations you've created. If you were using scenes, you could plug that in there, and so it's just kind of this quick
And you
view
can go right
from
to
I'll say an
those.
administrative view. Yeah.
Awesome.
So, and that's just kind of a management thing, right? And so it's an easy way to clean things out if you want to go ahead and nuke stuff for whatever reason.
Awesome, man. This is so much better.
All right. Yeah,
so
and
I'm
going to get like one final item, which I think you stumbled upon last week, and it's a project that another gentleman has been working on. for a little over a year now. On the forums, it's F. Vanori. His name's Francis Vanori. He's from Belgium. Just like simultaneously the smartest and nicest programmer I've ever run into. Like, he's just like a
That's
wizard
great.
and super cool. Just nice and chill. Right? And we've really been struggling with Next Gen, the company. It's we could have a whole episode on what a difficult organization they are to work with, and just how toxic they can be to their customers. And so the goal was, okay, how do we get off of this? And the problem that we have is that Next Gen device does a lot. Right? It's right, creating a touchscreen display is not a trivial endeavor, and Next Gen makes it easy. You just throw some serial commands. You got this drag and drop editor. It's all gooey, and uh, but the device is expensive. It's hard to control from like a supply chain perspective. The price has gone up substantially just in the last like 4 months or so. You mentioned they're about $10, or it's like about $15. If you buy them in bulk, right, I'm buying 20 to 50 at a time, so not large quantities, but you know I'm going to Ali and dealing with suppliers, right? And what we're told is that they just increase their prices across the board. Nextion says it's because of tariffs. We know that's a lie. Like, that's just absolutely not the case. We've also seen some concerns about screen quality from off-axis viewing, and
Mm.
to the point where we found some displays just work better upside down. And so I mentioned we have another, a TJC firmware out there and an enhanced firmware. There's also an inverted firmware. And so what we found is just some cases, if you're looking at it the wrong angle, it just looks weird, like some of the desktop models. And so what you do is you just flip the whole thing upside down and you run the inverted firmware, and now the off-axis working viewing works again. But man, it would be
That's
better if we
crazy.
didn't have to do that. Yeah, yeah. And so, but so he's been working on trying to make this. So he started with the HA Switchplate code base. Except unlike me, he's a professional embedded developer. So he made it just awesome, right? And then he's working with a tool called LVGL, like a little video graphics library, which is or lightweight. It's a lightweight graphics library intent. Think like OpenGL or DirectX, but for microcontrollers, right? So it's very lightweight, and he's been rewriting a lot of this for that environment. And like I said, you've got to reinvent the entire Next-Gen, and I do not want to undersell what an undertaking that is, right? He's not remaking HASP. He's remaking what took a team of Chinese engineers, a nearly $1 million Kickstarter. Like, they started this as a Kickstarter, and has just done the whole thing himself in his free time in a span of a little over a year. Like, it's mind blowing, right? So the offshoot of that is light and versatile embedded graphics library. Thank you, Worm5406, for correcting me on that. The offshoot of this is we should at some point be able to recreate HASP, but with fully open hardware, using any LCD we want, using any microcontroller we want, including ESP32, right? And enable a lot of additional features by going down that path. So that code is getting closer. Yeah, I will say we're still. Before coming on today, I reached out to the fellows that are working on that, and do I mention it? Do we even acknowledge that this exists? And the answer was no. Alan, you shouldn't mention it. Because we're not there yet, right? We aren't really ready for users to pile in and kick tires on this code. There's just a lot of rough edges right now, and it's not a functional thing. But then one of them pointed out, hey, didn't DrZzs bring this up on last week's stream and show the web page to his thousands of viewers? And like, well, it sounds like the secret is out because you did.
Oopsie.
Not your fault, right? Like, so, what I will point out is like those screens that you brought up, they're mock-ups. They're not functional yet, right? So it looks nice, but understand that these are desired end state, rapidly making progress. Francis is just he's I cannot say enough good things about the guy. He's just a powerhouse. We also have Blackadder. You might know him from the Tasmota
Oh yeah.
device database.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
so one of the guys that's really been pushing Tasmota first. He's all in on this now. He's been making some great progress. We've been interacting with some of the folks from Nabukasa. We just sent them some hardware so that they can kind of get their hands on some of the stuff that we're working on right there. There are hardware devices being made by manufacturers that aren't me that are starting to leak out onto the market now, that support like European wall plates. They don't work well in North America, but they do have Europe covered, which is nice. We've been talking to those folks. They have agreed to put our firmware on their devices. That's amazing, right? Like we
Wow.
have a tacit acknowledgement that what we're making is cool, and that at least one Chinese factory will take our code and put it on the device and ship it that way. So I think there's some really exciting things coming down the road. I'd expect maybe this summer for some of that to be ready to actually have some people pile in on. So HASP, as it exists today, will keep on trucking. I think we've really, with this blueprint approach, have created something that is sustainable, long term. The firmware should be pretty well locked in. It does all the things that I wanted it to do. We finally have that SSL support, the high speed serial, all the stuff I was after. It will be able to add blueprints, and users can create their own blueprints, publish them without an act of Congress being involved. Right, you're not going to go in and modify thousands of lines of YAML with every update. Right, you just go grab the new blueprint, stuff her in, you've got the new stuff. Right, so I think that what we have today is exciting, functional, is going to do the thing that people need to do for HASP today. I'm confident that whatever we're going to call the next HASP, we were calling it HASP 2 Electric Boogaloo in my head for a minute, up until these Boogaloo Boys thing started, and like it
No,
turned it
now you
into this
can't.
weird thing. Yeah, exactly. Like he just ruined it. We don't know, like Open Hasp or something. Who knows, right? Now, the three of us are a lot better at programming things than we are marketing stuff. So that's
So
that's left to be
besides
decided.
this, so this last few minutes and all your future plans has gotten a lot of more new comments here. What's the
Yeah.
best way for people to stay kind of up to date, or where you guys, is it in Discord, or I'm gonna have you back on here again,
Yeah.
no
I
doubt
would
about
say
that.
just for now, just don't.
Just
And
don't.
this is a conversation that we've had. It's not that we don't love the input and that we don't want to engage. It's just everything's really up in the air. Like we're working out this started by kind of emulating the next gen command protocol, but then we realized, why are we doing that? Like we're just making
Yeah.
our own thing, and we're going to rewrite hash to work with it. So if you were following along, everything you've done, it just got set on fire by that decision, and we're starting over again, right? So that's changing every day, and so like unless you're actively developing against it, I'm going to strongly recommend just taking it easy for a minute. Like I know everyone's excited, and I want you to be excited, right? But we weren't talking about it, and like word kind of got out, and so again, we love the enthusiasm. We really think it's going to be cool. It's going to eventually enable us to do things that we can't really do on HASP today. But to think of it in terms of new features isn't really the goal, right? It's to decouple from some of the hardware requirements that we have
Yeah.
today. Let this become a thing that we can shepherd out into the future, that we have tighter control over supply chains, or even just no control over supply chains, such that people who are making devices coming out of China today, that we can use their hardware and then just throw our code on it, like Tasmata does today. Like that's the goal. Like to
Yeah.
become this something that's not so tightly coupled to this one instantiation of the hardware. I'm sure I didn't say that right, but this one instance of the hardware, but rather a more open and flexible in more of the Tasmata sense.
So
So I think should we wait if we've not bought one yet? I'm going to say no. Like and one, because I want to sell these, but also
fair enough.
still has all the features. It's going to do all the things. You can work with it today. It's mature and ready, with the exception that I'm not putting the blueprints out there until 2 weeks from now, so that people can have the new version of Home Assistant, and I can publish blueprints which are going to be performant, and they aren't going to do weird things like show you a 3D printer when you go to select your HASP, right? Like there's some of these edge case things that we know are coming, and so we're holding off on that. And then, shortly after March 1, I think usually Home Assistant deploys on like the 3rd or something like that, usually within the first couple of days. And the beta will have extended back. And so if you're running uh, HAS, just a normal HAS, and you could subscribe to the beta channel easily, right? You'll have some early access to this, right? So really soon we're going to have all of this new stuff available for you. It's pretty well tested. I will note that we had a really good luck here today
Worked.
of getting that going
That's
yet
rare.
without no heroics, right? Like it didn't take reading the entire Bible front to back in order to figure out. So I'm grateful for that. How long do we take to get orders out? If I have something online, that means I built it already. So no more than a couple days, and I ship domestic U.S. priority. So if you place an order today, I will say you should have it in your hands by Friday. Not quite Amazon Prime, but we're pretty quick.
Awesome. And yes, for Steven, it does work with the original hardware. This stuff that we worked on today, the update that we did on this little one on my desk here, this one has been sitting here on my desk running for 2 years, and we just updated it with all the new stuff and got it working faster and used blueprints on it and all those things. So absolutely.
Yeah, all today's code, like everything that's coming out next here, goes all the way back to the first version of HASP that was proto board on my desk. So
yeah, so it's just a D1 Mini and the next gen display is really that's it. Can you ship to Canada? He could probably throw it to you in Canada, Brian. He could probably just chuck it.
Man, I'm in Michigan, but no, I do not ship internationally, and there's tax reasons for that. It's just kind of a pain in the neck. So that's probably going to change soon. I'm now using ShipStation, and they have some ways to fill out for every international shipment, you've got to like declare the goods and create, like pages of forms and all the rest of it. And it's just, I don't sell enough to make that profitable. And I don't charge enough for any of this to make it really profitable. And so I've just kind of demurred from, it will work great in Canada. It will work great in Mexico, right? Like North America is covered. The world does not use the same size electrical boxes. And so this project doesn't fit well in Europe, right? Or other not North America places. So that's another reason why we wanted to take a look at potentially getting off of NextGen, making something that we could use around the world.
Yeah. And there's 2 big splits for everybody to remember too, that it is a switch plate, and Luma got the idea by looking at the bedroom wall and seeing a place and thinking, what could I put there? But the one that I use most of the time sits on my desk. So it doesn't matter where you are. You can, you plug that into a USB power supply, 5 volts, and it doesn't matter. So but that doesn't mean but Luma's not going to put that together and ship it to you. That's something you just buy the parts and you put it together yourself, and then you can set it on your desk, whatever else.
Yeah. And I did make a more streamlined. You got the big fat desktop, and I realized that thing was taking up a lot of. And I gotta say, I am so in love with this design. I've got one of those little like Cricut. Have you ever seen those crafty drag knife? And so it's got a foam foot on there so it doesn't slide around. Oh man,
I have a Cricut.
Yeah, it's so good. So I'm really happy with the new desktop enclosure. This is great. Like I said, for those that are looking for a Stream Deck, this really now has that kind of capability. It's small and it's yours. You made it, you control it, every piece of it. You're not paying anybody else to license this or that, right? It being open is the most important part for me. And it's one of the reasons why NextGen is becoming problematic. Like we would really like more control for the end user to put their this to their own uses.
I think somebody's saying some of these links probably need an update. Is that what somebody's saying? Which ones? Which links aren't? Some of your maybe bill of materials links might need an update.
Oh yeah, they may very well. So I will. I'll take that under advisement and get that up to date. I am rewriting all of these docs because huge portions of them are changing, but the bill of materials isn't, and so that's a really important one. I will. I'll make sure that gets updated here soon.
You've done amazing. I still am just beside myself at the amount of time that you guys have put into this. You especially. So thanks, man.
It's been a fun project, man. I've learned a lot. And I will say, I'm on Discord constantly in the DrZzs chat. That is the official support connection, right? So jump onto the DrZzs Discord and come talk to us, man. If you got questions, you'd like to see new features, why does it do this, or how do I do that? I that's the whole reason that we've got blueprints now, right? Is one of your users reached out to me on your Discord and said, "Hey, what if you did this?" And now we are where we are. So I really rely on that, and so please come talk to me. I love the input.
Right here, there's a channel, everybody. This HA Switchplate channel, and you can see Luma's in there and a bunch of other guys in there showing off what they've been working on and how they're doing it. So, okay.
Question. So the dual gang that is in the GitHub and available for order. And so if that's in basically any configuration. So if you want it to be 4 wide with a Decora and then a HASP and then 2 toggle switches, we can do that. So we've got a lot of options. Most of those files are published. Right? So if you go to the GitHub, you can see double wide HASP Decora. It means, triple wide HASP Decora means it's 3 wide. There's a HASP on the left, there's a Decora in the middle, and there's a Decora on the right. And so that's how those files are named. You can just go ahead, grab them, print them out, and they'll work with your existing light switch devices. Pull one out, replace it with HASP, and then the front will cover the rest of them. Most of mine are set up like that, and I think the results look really good. Like it looks. My wife is an artist, and having crazy looking, goofy, half-cocked my project stuff laying around the house doesn't fly real well, right? The light switches are they look good. If you got a decent printer, you're going to have good results there.
Where are your models? I see you can do the printed the switch plate and the cover. Do you have it on Thingiverse? Did you say GitHub somewhere?
So the main project page, let me see if I can link to it there. There under GitHub, there's a 3D printable models section there. I'll just put it right in the Discord.
Sweet.
And then those are all the various, you'll see there's a bunch of them, 2x, 3x, 4x. If you just click on one, GitHub will show you the preview, right? So you can spin it around and see what you're expecting there. But if you don't see one that does the thing that you want, let me know. If you want a 5x that has a certain layout, I'm happy to crank those things out. It's pretty straightforward process. Takes a few minutes.
Okay. What else? Let's answer some more questions, and then we'll probably get on to the wrapping up. But it's been awesome having you. I mean, you and I have been chatting for years, and this was the first time I saw your face, or got to.
Yeah, hey.
I don't know if we've had any phone calls in the past. I think we did years ago.
We did. Yeah, we spoke twice a couple years ago, right? But I think it's the first time that you got to see me. I see, I've got you at a disadvantage here. I see you all the time. So yeah, it's been fun. Now everyone has Zoom now, right? Like I had to make sure that this stuff was clean, because this is where I work all day and I'm on conference calls, and so I had to have a cool looking background, right? So that is important.
Some of us do it with green screens to make it look cool. You actually have the cool background. I could put some fancy picture back
to the
here.
Other GitHub, like I said, all of this stuff you can print out yourself. It's been a very large undertaking.
I want to see that. I love pegboard stuff. I have some in my garage, but you've seen pictures probably at one time or another. But my garage is horrible.
So I at least have one section of the shop which looks really good, because I got some nice pegboards that you can 3D print.
All right, let's see. We'll do a couple questions here out of the Discord, and then we'll sign off. All right, live stream questions. We'll go back in here and see what we got. 2, we did that one. If you have a blueprint on page 1, slot 1, and then overwrite with a second blueprint to the same page or slot, is that how you upgrade replace, or should you uninstall first and upload a new one?
Yeah, I think you have to remove the old one. Well, if you want to put a different
if you want a whole different blueprint in there. I'm sorry, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And you can enable and disable, right? Like, so if you just want to disable the old one, or if you want to go to the old one and move it somewhere else, you can do that, right? So, but if you have two things that are writing to the same place on the screen, it just becomes a race. Which one got triggered first, right? And so, I'm sorry, most recently, and they'll overwrite each other as it goes. So if you So you're looking at blueprints, right? Which are
Yeah, I
just the
want to go to
shell of an
devices.
automation. If you go to your automations,
Automations? Oh, and then disable something? I was going to think could go in here to devices.
you could also do that. Yeah, it'll show you all the automations that are tied to a specific device through that view
And
too.
then you can find it this way right here. And then you can go to this and then you can disable this, right?
You can go through and you can see all those individual automations there. And you can enable or disable, or you can change where it is, right? So they aren't overriding each other. You want to keep that function, but you just want it on a different page. You just go and
Yeah.
tell it
Change
the new
this
place, right?
button page
Or
input
disable it,
or
or you could just straight up delete it, which is the top right hamburger menu.
bum bum bum.
And the new desktop enclosure has been published as Desktop Mini, I think is the name of the file there. So it uses the same desktop enclosure, but the base has just been pared down a bit.
Where did you send that? Did you post it in this chat here with us?
I think it's down.
Didn't see it come through the chat. I want to go there and look at it. I want to fire up my printer.
Oh, you know what? I might not have put the mini up there. That might be sitting in the dev branch right now. Let me see if I can just go to a link to that.
Okay, I'll find us another question to answer.
I got it. Here, I'll paste a link to the mini base into the Switchplate Discord channel. Live questions. Look at that.
There it is.
Live stream links. All right, here we go. I'll paste a link to the desktop mini base. Here we go. Let's see what other questions we got here. Does the pre-built come with a 3D case for through wall or on the desk? It's for the wall. If you want a desktop, hit a customization. There'll be like, let me know. Just reach out to me on Tindy. I'm happy to print you out a desktop. It's kind of a rare occasion, and so the general product is the wall mount solution. But I'm definitely willing to work with you on that. Let's see. Can you somehow fit Switchplate with a Sonoff Mini to replace a normal switch? Sometimes yes. It depends on your workbox. Right. What I found, if you deal with electricians, they're what we're called new work and old work. And new work usually it's a type of workbox you can put in if drywall isn't up. Right? Like if it's a normal construction situation, the electricians come in before the drywallers or your GC has really screwed something up, right? And they put those boxes in. Then there's old work boxes, which you're adding a new box where a wall is already up, and those have like tabs that fold up, and you can buy them at Home Depot, whatever. Those boxes tend to be a little tighter. And so if it's an old work box, you might have trouble wedging more stuff in there. I've just run into, there are standards for these work boxes and we should fit in there. And there should still be room for like a mini dimmer, like the Shelly situation or whatever else, right? But your mileage may vary, right? It's just going to depend on the size of your box. Let's see here. So Discord group for Switchplate. The official Discord group is a DrZzs Discord.
And there is a HA Switchplate channel on the left. If you go up there and look at all your channels over here, there is an HA Switchplate right there. And you can connect with Luma and a whole bunch of other guys that are doing a whole bunch of other cool stuff and contributing and asking and all that stuff. It's all there.
There's some mention about IT'd and NextGen. You're right to ask that question because NextGen, as originally sold, was always on the IT website. You'll notice that their forums are no longer tied to IT. And several more of those pieces have been kind of sliding out, and one is left to wonder why. If you've ever read through their forums, you might draw some conclusions as to why IT would not want to associate themselves with the way that the NextGen folks have chose to conduct themselves. I'll just leave that out there. So I suspect that is on purpose. And I think it was probably IT's decision. Frustrating because it's such a great product. Like
Yeah.
I really believe in NextGen, the platform. It was a great idea, and it's all TJC, right? Like it's this Chinese company that developed this thing, and they're great. And if you go through a translator, like they've got a website. It's slow because it's in China and whatever else. And they're super nice to their customers. They love open source. They answer questions and they don't ban people. Like, I don't know. Maybe it's just Google Translate that makes them look nice, but to me, like it's a normal company doing normal things with normal customers. And then NextGen is something different than that. So it's just what it is.
Crazy. I found the mini base. I'm so excited. I'm going to get myself one and print it out. It's awesome.
Well, thanks for your time today, buddy. Like I really appreciate you taking the allowing me to come in and yap to your folks here. I think this is really it's helpful for me to kind of walk through this whole process with you. I'm glad it worked. So it is still beta, right? Like that's it's nice to see that it's as easy as I believed it to be. And you know, your audience is always just brings me cool things, and I like to see what everybody shares.
Well, you've been great to have on, man. It's been a lot of fun. So thanks. Thanks for being here. Thanks for doing the work.
Yeah.
Let's call up the kids for sign up. Oh, and there we have some applause. Thank you very much. Thank you. All right, let's see if this thing will fire up the kids for sign off. Yep. All right. Yay, we getting some claps out there. Here comes the monkeys. I hear them running up the stairs. Sorry to everybody, we didn't get to all the questions, but I think
Hit me up in Discord.
Yeah,
always happy to help you guys out. So just jump in Discord, throw them at me, and we'll see what we can get for you.
All right. Anybody else coming, buddy? Yeah. Oh, look at that hair! Oh my goodness, that's awesome.
Wait, you haven't seen this hair?
I have. I love it when you do that. Okay, who's up? Ow, this is blowing my head. Is Gracie or Zoe or anybody else coming? All right. What do you guys want to do? How do you want to sign off? Sign up like we just ate Takis. Like those hot Taki chips. Dawson, this monkey, he put Takis in his waffles this morning.
My man. All right.
He broke up Takis, put them in the waffle.
Fantastic. That's a great idea.
We're going to sign off like we just ate Takis. Ready? As always, thanks for watching. Till next time. Adios. Okay. Thanks, buddy. All right, everybody. Have a good one. Take care. Luma, thanks again.